Today, we're diving into a problem that so many experienced professionals are facing, even if they don't have a name for it. It's called the credential trap.
So, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like your years of hard work, your proven successes, are suddenly not enough? Like you've hit a wall, and the only thing people care about is a piece of paper? Well, you are definitely not alone. This is a huge roadblock for a lot of people out there.
And you know this feeling, it actually has a name. It's called the credential trap, a term coined by Dr. Ronnie Rodas. He's done some fantastic research into this, noticing that across all kinds of industries, not just higher ed, but everywhere, really valuable, seasoned pros were hitting this invisible barrier, all because they didn't have a specific academic degree. So what's really going on here? Well, at the heart of it is this thing called degree inflation. And what it does is it quietly creates this kind of two-tier system in the workplace.
Degree inflation is basically when companies start demanding degrees for jobs that, frankly, never needed them before. The job itself hasn't changed, the skills needed are the same, but now there's a new requirement. You know, a bachelor's degree becomes the new high school diploma, a master's becomes the new bachelor's, you get the idea.
And this whole shift, it creates a serious clash. It's a conflict between two totally different ways of proving you're the right person for the job.
And that conflict looks like this. On one hand, you've got what we can call experience-based legitimacy. That's your deep knowledge of the company, your proven track record, the real results you've delivered year after year. But on the other hand, you have credential-based legitimacy. That's the formal degree, which for employers is just a simple, standardized signal. The trap really snaps shut when that simple signal starts to outweigh all your proven substance.
And make no mistake, this isn't just about missing out on a promotion. The stakes here are incredibly high, especially when your job itself is suddenly on the line.
Dr. Rodas just nails it with this quote. Inside your own company, you're valued. You're getting paid well for everything you know. You're kind of grandfathered in. But the second you step out into the external job market, all that institutional knowledge can become invisible. The outside world doesn't see it. They just see a missing degree on your resume.
So yeah, the trap doesn't really feel like a trap until it springs. And for most people, that happens right after a layoff. And when you look at the data for what happens next, well, it is pretty sobering.
First of all, just finding a new job is no sure thing. Take a look at this. A full third of experienced, long-term workers who lost their jobs were still unemployed later on. That is a staggering number of talented people being left out in the cold. And what about the ones who do manage to find a new role? Well, it often comes with a pretty big catch. Nearly 4 out of every 10 had to take a pay cut. Think about that. They're back to work, sure, but they've taken a serious financial step backwards.
And here's where it gets even tougher. The problem gets way worse the older you are. Of those experienced workers who took a pay cut, the overwhelming majority, almost 3/4, were 55 and up. All that experience suddenly becomes a liability, not an asset.
Okay, so why is this happening? Why does a credential, a piece of paper, suddenly carry more weight than years of real-world competence? Well, it's not personal. It's systemic.
A big driver here is something called signaling theory. Basically, when employers are looking at a giant stack of applications, they need a shortcut. A degree is an easy, low-cost filter. It's a way for them to reduce uncertainty, and it's especially useful for all the automated software out there that's scanning resumes for keywords before a human ever sees them.
So let's break down exactly how this trap works. First, the automated systems just toss your resume out. If you do get an offer, you lose that pay premium you earned for your deep knowledge. That often leads to what's called occupational downgrading. You have to take a lesser job just to get back in the game. And with all that comes the loss of the really important stuff like good health insurance and retirement benefits. It's like falling off a cliff. Okay, the problem is real and the stakes are clearly high. But, and this is important, you are not powerless. Let's talk about some real strategies to break this trap, both for organizations and for you as an individual.
Companies can actually do a lot here. It can be as simple as changing their job descriptions to say degree or equivalent experience. That alone can get great candidates past the automated filters. They can also invest in their own people by funding certifications or creating internal programs to validate skills. But the biggest change? Building promotion paths that are based on what people can actually do, not just the paper they hold.
So, what can you do right now to protect yourself? The most important thing is to be proactive. Start building a portfolio that shows your concrete results, the projects you led, the money you saved. If you do go for a credential, be really strategic.
Get one that's targeted to the jobs you actually want. Also, learn to talk about your job in a way that any company can understand, not just your internal team. And finally, get your references lined up now, before you ever need them.
All of this really just brings us back to one single fundamental question. Should your proven, demonstrated skills ever really have an expiration date? It's something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.